Hi folks, welcome back to Atebeno Park. And today it's Moah Hadrosoahs. And we're going to be adding to the section I opened up in the last episode. So this one is going to be a 2 habitat speed build. So it's going to be a little bit longer. It's starting with duplicating the care building that we had previously to make a bigger care building to give a place for our new animal to hang out. The new animal in question is going to be a ghost animal for the moment because it's Parasaurolophus, which is just been announced for beta as a little bit before I made this video. And we don't have the animal yet because it's not beta yet. So I'm going by the habitat statistics that the devs put out in the animal cards that they had done last year and earlier of the 50 animals that were supposed to be in early access. Of course, there's no longer 50 animals, but 22, I think. I don't know. Anyway, 22 animals. Let's use that number. And so Parasaurolophus will be among those because he'll be in beta. Um, we're doing one of the 3 species, which is Walkeri. It's from the Dinosaur Park formation. It's a pretty rare animal in that formation, and it seems to have liked swampy environments, probably near the coast. Um, anyway, so I'm going to give it a kind of swampy habitat with a lot of stuff from the aquatic biome. Um, and you see there's already was a pond that I put in, and that one's clear water. The new pond that just went in is the muddy water. And I'm not sure what the rationale on that is, but it is what it is. So this is a faster section of the build right now where I had to clean up the inside of the building, and you can see rocks sticking through it. Just cleaning some stuff up, and that's not the most exciting part of the build. But it is what it is. Anyway, so there won't be an animal in this habitat when it gets finished, but if this park transfers over to beta, which one's fingers are crossed for, but there's no guarantee, this is where that bad boy will be. Parasaurolophus is not the biggest of the hadrosaurs by a long shot, but he's kind of cool, and a lot of people actually like him a lot with the crest that he has, which looks like a big horn off the back of his head. He's probably going to be a pretty noisy fellow in this park. There have been attempts to recreate the noise it could make through the resonating chamber, since its nasal passages run up from the nose out the length of the horn, turn around, and come back into the skull. Those attempts are probably somewhat flawed, since they're not being powered by the size of the lungs that Parasaurolophus had. But it does give a vague idea, and be interesting to see what sort of sounds the devs are going to give this critter. I'm looking forward to having him in the game. So, a lot of groundwork in this part of the habitat, and the plants are coming up shortly. I wanted to give it a little different ground texture from the previous one. Also a little swampy there for Lambeosaurus, but not quite the same. So a lot of the aquatic trees, and a little bit of spicing from the temperate environment, which seems to suit this animal. I don't know what the final stats will be as to what kind of foliage it will like. But I wanted this to be a relatively dense environment, but still have the animal visible for our guests. It will be visible in 2 places. One I had already set up before I started filming this video, and I think you'll get a look at that a little bit later. A little private viewing space where guests are down on animal level. And the other will be from the walkway coming out of the area of the first habitat in the hadrosaur section of Atebeno Park, where you'll see a bit of that being worked on a bit later as I put in fencing to the basic walkway area that I had added, so there was a turnaround for the first habitat in the hadrosaur section. There are not a lot of animals in the PK roster that Parasaurolophus can share space with. Styracosaurus is one of them. So, I guess in theory I could have put this guy up on the walkway into the hadrosaur section and potentially merge it with the Styracosaurus exhibit, much as I did with the Lambeosaurus exhibit and the implied Pachyrhinosaurus exhibit. But I'd already done that, so something a little bit different. I am doing the usual minimal inside work on these habitats where the keepers could get to the animals and provide care for them. And that's about all I'm going to do with that in this park for a couple of reasons. We don't have a lot of props to dress these out, and quite frankly, the alpha parks may not transfer to beta, so it would be hours of fun that will get washed away and only remain in pictures. And there's only so much that I'm willing to do. But this is letting me try out ideas for more permanent parks. And as a sort of preview of coming attractions, there will be a park tour of a park you haven't seen me build coming up. Yet another built-in alpha park, but one taking into account beta animals and early access animals, at least by way of providing them with a place to hang out, assuming that they were there. But they won't be there. Some of the beta animals will, I hope, eventually get in again if the park transfers. But it's primarily an exercise in working with the tools, getting very familiar with them, and getting a sense of what looks good in the parks and what I might like to have in a more final park. So ultimately, by the time we get to early access, when parks should remain viable as the game goes on, I will build probably a park that has elements from several of these parks you're seeing in the alpha builds. So there's the care building. I decided I didn't really like how that skinny bit looked. It just got too distorted. So we go back to the wider opening ones and set it up so that I have that opening, the double opening for this animal. Yeah, so not the most exciting build, I think, but an important one to expanding the park. The next habitat will be for Edmontosaurus regalis. Like Parasaurolophus, it's a 3-species animal in this game, although all of them are from North America. Parasaurolophus has a representative from China. So, it's going to be in dig sites in several places. Oops, too many trees. So, yeah, more foliage because, as I said, I wanted it to have a little bit. This is the view from that little private viewing area down at animal level. So we black out here and then show up in the space for the Edmontosaurus exhibit. And this is also been marked out with that band of dirty type texture to let me get a sense of what I'll be working with. It been approximated for the amount of space I'm thinking the animals will need. And I decided to raise some of this area and provide them with a rock wall that will be part of their enclosure. So some of this section you'll see me playing with that, and some fencing and working out where there'll be rocks and where there'll be fence. You can see the power plant there because this section of the park is out where it wasn't getting power. And I wanted to make sure it had more than enough and power that could be extended past this if the park builds out further. Right now I put a fence across there from the power plant to the raised area, and that'll go away later when I decide to put the care building out there. Right now I'm trying to define the area where there will be a viewing building, and this viewing building, which you'll see as part of the speed build here, will be a little bit different from some of the ones that have gone before. Put the words in, and sometimes there's extra words. But before that building goes in, there's a fair bit of rock work to do, working on tricking out that raised area. The game rocks just have a more their feel than the painted rock surfaces. I think that's one area where Planet Zoo outdoes PK, which is relatively few places, but one of them is in that rock texture on the painting. Somehow the Planet Zoo people got a very dimensional looking texture, and it blends in very, very well with the rocks, and it's not quite as sharp in PK. Okay, here comes the start of the viewing building, and I decided to take one of the little tunnel pieces, stretch it out, and then multiply it several times so the texture didn't get too weird, to make a tunnel for the path that goes out past this Edmontosaurus exhibit. And haven't tried that before, so this is sort of a experimental take there. I should have built a lot more of this building on the grid and then moved it, but I didn't. So you'll see me doing a lot of adjustment work, because when I add new pieces, they want to be somewhat closer to the grid, and it just didn't line up with where I had moved this structure to. So a little extra work for myself, because why not? So I did the long sloping stairway, and it ended up on the path, and that was not so great. So adjustments had to be made, and you can see me here pulling out the arches to where I put the paths, so there'll be a little come up to a landing and then enter the building going on here, and I'm going to have to adjust that groundwork as well, get it out of the stairways. So this was starting by laying the foundation, and you'll see a little bit of a jump because I had a crash on my computer while I was filming what was intended to be the next segment, and lost the start of the building here. So rather than rebuild it, I just forged on ahead. I guess if I had built it, this video would be even longer. And kudos to all of you who stay through this one with me, because there's not a lot of exciting new stuff going on here, but it's a long build because of the double habitat. I wanted to get this hadrosaur section done. I'm still debating whether this will be the end of Alpha Atebeno Park or not, whether I'll put more animals in. If we are deep in the alpha, the devs are busy working on beta, and they announced that beta will be in third quarter of this year, and that means it's later even for the VIPs. So here's the jump, and we're back, and you can see the upper walls are in place, lots of glass, and you can also see the archway through the passage, and I duplicated that to give it a little more interest going through the tunnel. And the last little bits of cleaning up the path work to go through that tunnel, I had to make some adjustments. And now rock work on the other side. As one of the things I decided was, I didn't put in handicap accessible access to that elevated viewing area. So it ought to be a place where our challenged guests can see the animals. And that's going to be another slightly smaller, little off the beaten path space where you can look into the exhibit at animal level. And these rocks going in were intended to be the barrier for the animals there. You can see the paths going in now. And you will later see me doing some adjusting there because, frankly, they're just too tall. The guests can't see over them. So there's sort of no point in having that passageway without the guests being able to see the animals. So the rocks have to come down. And more rocks have to be added to add that privacy effect. And you'll note that these privacy rocks, which are supposed to be screening people watching the animals, are just as tall as what they're supposed to be looking through. Definite non-starter there. So the drawing board had to come back out a little bit later. You'll see them getting shrunk down. Just trying to do a little bit of beautifying on it right now, and adding the rocks and dealing with this staff path. It's the black asphalt which I've been using to code for a staff path, and if I connect that, the guests will walk right down it right now. So I need to leave it slightly unconnected at this time. So lots of rocks and plants and fussing with them. But, to be honest, this is the thing that sells these parks. Getting it to look natural or unnatural if that's your intent. But I do like the more natural look. And it takes time to place them. These are modular plants going in here to give me the precise control over where they sit and how big they are. For the most part, I'm leaving them the size they are, but a few of them need to be tweaked to have a little better fit and a little bit more terrain painting to just brush that in. And obviously the main habitat needs some of that painting too. It's the brown that I use to outline the area sort of looks like a scar by the time I get in here to set it up for animals. On this one, I put in the big tall trees, which are stand-ins. They're cowpokes right now, but they're stand-ins for coastal redwoods. And coastal biome plants are supposed to be coming in beta. So, this same habitat would look rather different once beta came along, because we're also supposed to be getting a bunch of ground cover ferns, which is much more appropriate for the Mesozoic, and those I expect to be workhorse plants for a lot of habitats, whether they're coastal or not. If it turns out that having coastal biome plants in an exhibit upsets the animals. When you paint them in, then they'll go in modularly, since my understanding is that modular plants won't affect the animals. A way to let you have the habitat look like you want without necessarily screwing it up for how the animals perceive it. So they get in a water hole. The Edmontosaurus regalis likes some water in its habitat. It must have some with a 5% need. But that provides a drinking hole for it without spending a lot of space on it. It's much more tolerant about how much plant coverage it has. So here's the fast build on the care building, and I wanted to do the where it might be seen versus where it doesn't get seen thing on this one, as I've done on some of the other buildings, and set it up for a place for the animals to hang out and rest. It also enlarges the exhibit a little bit. When I put animals in, you know, there may technically be enough space for them. I can't actually tell right now, because although we do have a habitat requirement listed, the animals don't care yet. It's hard to know if you've met it in terms of crowding in the exhibit. Like impossible to know. So can't sweat it too much at this stage of the game. And anyway, it just felt better to me to have more space for the animals, even though some of it is taken up with the care building. They'll be using that. And you know, there's only so much I can do to make sure things work at this stage of the game. Right now it's mostly about looking decent and suiting both my take on it and the aesthetics of the habitat. So fussing around, making the building a little bit different just because, you know, I don't want to build the same building completely over and over again. And a faux path out there to the staff path, and then a real one, since it seemed to go well. And the usual low roof with the venting space at the top. Nothing new there. Trying to go for a certain amount of consistency with the builds and the structures in this park. An overall building that's much the same, and then some detail differences. Is that the right approach? I don't know. If I could save these buildings to some sort of bank and then pull them back out again, this would all go a lot faster, and I wouldn't have to keep building them every time. But right now, I didn't want this one to be in the same group as the other hadrosaur spaces, so it's a separate build rather than a duplication from the other ones, because right now we can't split or add to groups, which, yeah, is a mild inconvenience, but it is what it is. So here's the first bit of the trying to bring those rocks down and still have them be habitat barrier that the animals can't walk over, while letting the guests see into the habitat from ground level. And they're still too high at this stage. So there's a check to see where the animals can go, and that one's too far away to see about the back part of the habitat. And yep, they can get into the building, but it looks like they might be able to go up that slope. Don't want to chance that. So add some rocks to make it clear they can't go there. This viewing building, of course, hasn't been finished, so I'm going to do a couple of little adjustments and add the usual viewing screens and stuff. The whole viewing screen thing is something I haven't done yet for either of these two hadrosaur habitats, but now it's starting. So always is easier to do what you're doing for the inside of these buildings before you put a roof on it. But again, because of the split and grouping limitations right now, um, the can't build a roof separately and then just raise it and lower it when it's convenient. And this is where I noticed that I was using the theme of the trash cans from the other park I've been building, so they all go away and get replaced with the wooden outer covering trash cans that I've been using in this park. And on to the fencing, because we can't have our guests falling off the stairways. It can sometimes be tedious to do this stuff because it doesn't always line up perfectly straight, either because it doesn't or because you managed to not get it squared up with where it needs to go. This one I think is on me, but also the length of the fencing pieces aren't always what you need. So it's very important to change to the global control when you've got something that's off square, like these railing pieces are, before duplicating them. Otherwise you get all kinds of wonky things happening. But this way you can make them rotate in the same plane and move them over. It's I had to be taught that by a dev, but I have learned it and embraced it, and boy does it make life easier. So rather than a venting thing, I decided that these are guests. They're going to get air conditioning should it matter eventually, and therefore light was more important than air circulation. So they get some cellar story windows up there. And the next thing I had to attend to was the fact that there's a river running next to this building. We can't have guests running off and playing in the water. So a little bit of fencing along there and extending the fencing beyond this building to the area that is past it and where there would be future exhibits. And now it's time to deal with this river area and make it look like something more than just the very rough layout and sketch-in that I had, because now there's an exhibit up here and it needs to look like part of the park. So rock work to enhance the painted rock sections and lots of plant work, all toward beautifying the park and making it look neat, because who doesn't want a park that looks neat? As I mentioned, Edmontosaurus is one of those 3 species animals in Prehistoric Kingdom. Regalis is the fanciest named one, even though it's not actually the largest. But all these animals can be found in Canada and parts of the U.S. West. And I'm not going to do all of them in this park plan, but we may see a return of Anectons if I get up there to do the Hell Creek area. At the moment, we only have 2 animals from Hell Creek, so it's, and I keep wanting to do a Hell Creek safari, and that's not always the best answer. And of course, we don't have a safari option at the moment, but you will see me do a take on something on that order in this other park that I've been working on. So don't want to do that in this one. But Hell Creek seems just you got to do something from Hell Creek, because that's where everybody's favorite, most famous dinosaur lives. And of course, that's T-Rex. Yeah, much depends on the passage of time here, guys. and whether beta shows up. Because if beta, at least for the VIP, shows up, it's going to start taking some of my attention, because we are the first ones to test it beyond the devs, and that helps make it be a little more functional when it goes out to everybody else. So that means I'll have to be doing builds and working with it. And since, as according to the devlog, there's going to be a lot more gameplay in it that will require a different kind of testing and a different kind of building to see how these things all play out. While I'm looking forward to it, it may cut into the YouTubing schedule, because although I can do that work and sort of put it in a freezer until I can haul it out when beta is available to everybody, it means I may not be maintaining the same release schedule that you've been seeing so far. Even with the drop down to 2 instead of 3 a week, it still may be too much. So we'll see how it goes. I don't know yet, and therefore I can't tell you. But anyway, a little more fencing there, which puts trash cans on the wrong side of the fence that needs to be adjusted. And, so out they come. And, yeah, yep. And a fussy little rope to nominally keep the guests from going down that path to the facilities. And I don't know if that actually will stop them in game, should the path be connected, so I left the path unconnected. And some more fencing to finish off the look. Yep. And now I think it's probably time to finally go over and deal with the elevated portion of viewing into the Parasaurolophus exhibit, starting with the fencing on the stairs. You may recall from the previous one, our accessibility challenge guests have an elevator over there. So they would be able to come out onto this elevated section and see Parasaurolophus, but in order to get around the stairs, they'd have to go back to the elevator and come around the long way. It's a challenge sometimes, if only because I'm tired of building elevators everywhere. Pseudo-elevators, since their accessibility guests are kind of pseudo anyway. They're not appearing in game, but I still want to build as if they're in the park. And yeah, it sucks that they don't get all the same kind of access that other guests get. But it's kind of the way the world works. They just don't have the same kind of accessibility that unchallenged people get. I don't suffer from that myself, but I do have my own challenging issues in that regard. So I try to think about that and accommodate such things where I can, even though it's only a game. Doing this kind of fence work is very fussy, particularly with the curves and all, and it does result in various fence elements having unequal sizes, as you see right here. And I could go back and adjust all those sizes so that it's less obvious, but that's a pain. And it's just not something I'm willing to do in alpha. We'll see when we get to early access and the full release. But in alpha, for parks that are going to vanish, I'm being a little obsessive compulsive as it is. And that's, that's one obsession compulsion too far. So once I get all the fences in here, I need to bring in the information uh, elements for our guests. Obviously, no informational speakers in this game right now. Maybe never. Who knows? Uh, and we don't have information boards either, but I think that at least will be inevitable. So I will continue with my program of using the emissive windows as stand-ins for those things. Uh, I saw someone else's build in the PK discourse where they had done uh, actually tricked out what they called a guard room. I'm afraid I don't remember the name of the fellow who did it. But on their faux computer screen, again using these kind of emissive texture windows to stand in for it, they decided to put in a screensaver using the crowny piece to put on the screen. And very clever, but it's one of those obsessive compulsive things one step too far from me right now. So, yep, time to put in screens and giving them a quick and dirty stand made of columns that have been resized. It works for a quick glance, but it's not something I'd want in a permanent park. So taking that same screen and putting it down in the hideaway viewpoint for this habitat, and then I'm going to steal it over to the Hadrosaurs as well and put it in their little hideaway ground level viewpoint. And before I did that, however, I noticed that, yes, indeed, using my door stand-in for people, they're just too darn tall, those rocks. So my solution was to bring them down and then drop the ground on the inside of the habitat so that for the Hadrosaurs, they remain very tall rocks. But for the guests, they won't be so tall. Still a little too tall. So drag them down a bit more. I wanted that uneven look just for the natural ambiance of that. But the guests can't be relied on not, walking onto the rocks and, jumping in or falling into the exhibit. So a little bit of double barrier here by using the railing as a way to discourage the guests from doing that. Obviously, in the real world, people can climb over that in a heartbeat, but a lot of guests would be in a world like this very intimidated by these animals. They're bloody big. They are not small at all. And a little bit like walking up to an elephant. Something that not everybody's going to try doing. So I've got animals in here, maybe not their full social group, playing with it, taking a look at it, deciding whether it has the right vibe, and deciding it doesn't, wanting to smooth it down on one side and let it be a little more rocky on the pond side. Perhaps that's why the water accumulates here, because its desired path is blocked by stone. Maybe there's a spring. I don't know. It doesn't have to be. It's a park. It could be a totally fabricated thing designed to look natural with a pipe. And that's okay. But when the habitat's there, the animals drop down and we'll go a little real time and let them walk around a little bit, because we're coming up to the end of this episode. Like I said, it was a long one, and if you're still here with me, kudos to you. Thanks for coming by to watch what I'm doing with Prehistoric Kingdom and hang out while I blather on. I really like this game a lot. It has its quirks still, but then I think all games will. Just the other day I dropped back into Planet Zoo and was surprised at just how used to how the tools work here I have become, and how used to the color saturations that are here, which are somewhat different aesthetic from Planet Zoo. And yeah, I'm Dino Bob, and I like dinosaurs, and I want to build dinosaur parks. And Planet Zoo was a means to an end in getting through that the pandemic and the desire to build a dinosaur park when I didn't have a dinosaur park game to build it in. So yeah, okay. So thanks again for stopping by. Like the video if you did. Subscribe if you want to encourage me to do more of this. Uh, I'd appreciate it. It lets me know someone's paying attention to what I'm doing, and not just shouting into the void, as it were. Uh, but oh, tired hadrosaur, gonna have to lie down and take a rest. You gonna go to sleep up there? Oh, look, I think the male just went to sleep down in the foreground there. You can't see him because of the menu, but adding a couple more rocks to the end. Short rest for the gal up there. Yeah, he did go to sleep. He just pulled his head up. Still in resting mode though. Um, yeah. Noisy beasts, hadrosaurs. Oh, go run off somewhere. And as I said, we are getting to the end here. Whoops, pulled back too far. Got a little glitch there. And that's a view our guests will be having of the hadrosaurs, particularly when they hang out here near the water hole, which, real animals tend to do. And maybe these guys will too in the future. But right now it's not part of their repertoire. So this is Dino Bob saying, once again, thanks for stopping by, and see you in another video.